So the next step in creating our PHP Guestbook is to make it so that when our guests fill out this form, as ugly as it might be, and click on the Submit button, that we use a PHP script to insert that data into a record into our MySQL database. So we've set up the form and we've set up the database, and now we have to connect the two together. So to do that, we're going to use a PHP script, and that PHP script we're going to borrow from W3 Schools. So out in W3 Schools, we're going to take a look at the section that's in Learn PHP under Server Side. And then if we go down on the left-hand side, we're going to see this section about MySQL database. And each of these steps kind of takes you through what is a MySQL database. Well, that's what we're running on our web server. A database just stores data, and we interact with it using a language called SQL or SQL. And here's how we connect to it so we can see some code. They give you a couple options, this object-oriented version and the procedural, and we'll be using the procedural. But this code also exists down into our insert data, which is what we want to do. We want to go in and insert data. And so not only will this connect to the server, but it will also execute a SQL statement that will insert data into our database. So we'll start by copying this code. Make sure you're using the procedural code. We'll start by creating a new PHP file with this code, and then we'll make changes to it to make it work with our particular database. So in Notepad++, I'm going to grab a new file and paste that in there. I will save that into my server, again, back in my C drive, WAMP64, www, and then your name. And I'm going to call this addguest.php. Okay, you'll see I get the color coding. The first thing we see are these 4 variables that relate to connecting to our database. So we will be running our server under localhost. The username, if you recall from our last time, was root. The password is blank. Now we will need to retain the double quotes, but nothing inside of them because we have no password. And the database, if you recall, was called guestdb, all lowercase. So this next statement here sets up a connection variable that uses those 4 variables that we set up here, and it then connects to our database, connects to our MySQL database using this statement right here. And then there's a little if statement that says, if I'm not connected, say connection failed and tell me what the error was. So if you see that if you first test this out and you get an error, you go back and look at these variables and make sure they match what's in your database. So the next thing is we're going to change this SQL statement, and we have a SQL variable, and it has this line here, which is a SQL statement that says insert into. Now the first part of this is the table that we want to insert it into, and we called our table guest. And then these are the fields that we want to use. And so the fields that we have, if we're going in order that we created them, guest is our first one, and then email is the next one, so I'll use that. And then we have age, interests, and finally comments. And if you're thinking, well, how does he remember that? Well, let's go back and take a look. We'll go into PHP My Admin, and this is going to make access to our MySQL server where we can take a look at the database that we created. So here's root and okay. No, thank you. Okay, so here's root with no password. Let's hit go. And you're going to see here under, up at the top, it's also listed here, databases. And you can see I have this guest DB database. And inside of here, if I click Browse, you're going to see the different fields: guest, email, age, interest, comments. So that's what I'm matching up to. Okay? So let's go back, and now I want to insert in. So I just need some generic data here. I'm going to take off that doe right there, and let's just, because we need a name, we need an email, okay, and age, we can put, I don't know, 10, and interest, let's just put test, and comments, we'll just put test comments. We're just going to hard code some data in. So right now, if I execute this, this should insert this data in. So let's save that and give it a try. So let me come back here, and now I'm going to replace this up here with add guest. Now, if you get an error here, take a look at the error and see what it says. If it says, well, it couldn't log in, why? Did you have one of those variables not correct? Do they not match? Did you change the name of your database? Is it not spelled correctly? You might also get an error saying that, hey, it doesn't recognize this table name or this field. So each of those, errors is going to be different, and you have to kind of look at it. If I see this new record created successfully, that means it took this sample data and it plugged it into my database. And so now if I hit browse again, I'm going to see that, look, it plugged in all of this. Okay? Perfect. Now, that gets us to where we can insert it from our guest book. So to set this connection up with our guest book, we have to tell it within our form tag here, where do we want to process this? And we're going to process it using the file we just created, addguest.php. We also need to use the post method. So what this does now is that when I click on the submit button, it's going to send this data over to my guest book using the method post. Now, if you remember back from what we did in W3 schools, if we come back up to here and we look at form handling, there was two methods, post and get. Okay, remember that from when we changed the background, and we were using the get method. But now we're going to use the post method. So we're actually going to grab the post method. I think I can just use this piece right here. Let's go up to post right here. All right. So now what I want to do is use that to grab this data that's coming in. And I'm going to do this up at the top, give myself some space. I'll call this $in, and that's going to capture the name. Now, is it called name? How do I know? Well, if I go to my guest book, what is my first field called? What's its name right here? Well, the name is name. Okay, so name is going to go into here. And I can just keep on doing this. Oops. E, and that's going to be what? Email. So this is going to bring in all of that post data that's coming over. Age, I'll call that A. Interests, I'll put that as I. And then finally, comments. Now these, and don't be confused, these are your form name elements. If I'm looking at my guest book, I have interests here, I have comments here, I have age here. That's where it's getting that. Even though those might or might not match up to what you have in your database. This is what's coming from your form. I'm taking them using this post method and storing them into variables. Now I want them to be replacing these down here. So this will be $in, $E, $A, I, and C. Now, if I did it just like this, it would just put $in into my name. So this is to get this variable in here, I have to break this string. So this is a string here, and I want to do what? Well, you know you need to concatenate that. So I need to end the string and then use a period. And then there's a little dance here, a period, and then start the string. So you have to keep on going through here. I know it's a little bit tedious. And what you might want to do is just do one variable at a time. So if something messes up, it won't give you a lot of good feedback if you mess these up, but you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just inserting those in. So now what I want to do is, instead of running this just under add guest, I want to type something in. Yeah, it's going to use my actual data. I'm 51. I don't Audi, perfect. And I can put something in here and say hello and hit submit. Let's see what happens. Let me reload this. I don't think it loaded that. Let me come here. Did I save this here? Let's make sure that's saved. And now let's reload this, because it should process this. There. Okay, now I get an error. Unexpected, doesn't like that $A. Let's see what's going on there. Is A one of my variables? A is age. It doesn't like the A here, and that is because I have the period on the wrong side of the quotes. There we go. Let's save that. Let's go back, hit submit again. Same thing with I. Did I do the same thing again? I sure did. Yeah, I see it there too. Period should be right around the variable. Let's try that now. Hey, that looks good. Let's take a look in our database. Let's reload. Let's just click on browse, and there it is. My name, email, and that's perfect. You're probably going to have some errors you have to work through. Take your time and be patient. Good luck.